Welcome to the She's Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Most weeks, I'm here bringing you one-on-one conversations with women who have inspirational stories to share. These women are entrepreneurs, authors, musicians, spiritual teachers, fitness gurus, and adventurers. Though they come from a wide variety of backgrounds, what they have in common is that they are approaching the world by seeing the possibilities, not the obstacles. While my preference is to have these conversations in person, of late I've had to record over Zoom, which is exactly what I did for today's episode. Today I have a returning guest, Shen. Angela has made lemonade out of lemons with regards to dealing with this pandemic. As you might recall from episode number 45, Angela is the founder and CEO of Savor Seattle Food Tours. When things started to shut down in Seattle at the beginning of the pandemic, I watched as Angela made really quick changes, pivots, as everyone says these days. She created a new path for her company that fits right in with the company's mission while also supporting local businesses, providing a service to locals, and, very importantly, keeping her business alive. I've been keeping up with what she's doing and have been so impressed with how she's managed to go with the flow, and I just really wanted to bring her back on the podcast to chat. I was most interested in how she knew so early on that she needed to make changes, and I wanted to find out how she went about making them. Now, this is a shorter, just a check-in episode that I'm doing today. Let me know if you like this format and if there's any past guests that you'd like to hear from, and I can reach out to them to bring them back. Just email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com. And while you've got the podcast on your mind, if you'd like to show your support, you can do so with a donation through Patreon. By becoming a part of our community, you'll have access to bonus content, which is usually in the form of a question I ask guests. As a Patreon supporter at just $5 a month, you'll also get a heads up about what guests are coming up and have the ability to get your questions answered. You'll also be invited to join our private Facebook group, and that is ladies only. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/bebold. As always, sharing this episode with a couple of friends is super helpful to me, as word of mouth is the number one way that podcasts grow. So you'll get some good karma points if you do that, if you just share this episode. Okay, with that, please enjoy this conversation with the ever-inspiring Shen. Hey, Angela, the last time we spoke, I couldn't believe it when I went back and looked at it. The last time we spoke was in April, probably March, April of 2018. And Savor Seattle, I know that was so long ago. Savor Seattle was doing all these really cool things. I mean, you're still doing cool things, but very different than what you're doing now. And what I would love to do, and the reason why I asked you to come back and let's just have a little short conversation today, was because from the very beginning of COVID and the lockdown, and when things started to really shift in Seattle and in Washington State, you guys at Savor Seattle made some really quick decisions about things, and you started getting really innovative. And what I would love you to do right now is let's talk about what you were doing, from, let's say, March backwards. So let's talk about pre-COVID and your business model and all the wonderful things that you were doing. And then let's shift into, what you were doing immediately and kind of the really cool things that you're doing now. So I'll just let you take the lead on that.
Thanks so much for having me back on your show, Beth.
Yeah. Great to have you here. I'm so excited to hear from you today.
So before COVID, which I refer to as BC, we were in the business for 13 years of taking people on delicious food and cultural tours of primarily downtown Seattle. And of course, when COVID hit, I'll never forget Leap Day. We got our first case and the cancellation call. We're the epicenter for the entire United States. So leading up until that point, I had already been warning my team and preparing them for that moment. because seeing what was happening already in Asia and then ultimately in Italy, I knew it was just a matter of time before it was going to come to the United States. I didn't know that Seattle would be the first city, of course, but just giving my team that sense of readiness for what was to come and keeping them abreast of, what was happening in the news media and just letting that percolate earlier so that we weren't totally blindsided by it. I remember having a conversation with my father a few weeks prior to our first case in Seattle. And he was reporting to me that family members in Hong Kong were saying that restaurants were going out of business because nobody was eating out. And he told me that I was really fortunate that COVID didn't start in the United States, because then my business, if I was worried that my business was in jeopardy then, he said, just imagine if it had started in the United States. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, it may not be starting in the US, but it's coming. And so how do you get ready?
So how did you know that this would be different than like swine flu or SARS or Ebola, the things that were really kind of that came before this that petered out so quickly? Did you really have a sense that this was different?
I guess the way that I thought of it was that it didn't matter if it was the same or if it was different, because it wouldn't change the actions and the readiness that we would need to have and the mindset in order to be ready for that. It didn't lessen the blow, obviously, having to let 12 employees go, but at least it helped provide a runway for a plan. And so before everything hit, I had already been percolating on how is it that we're going to be able to continue to be ambassadors of the Seattle food scene. If we can't bring people to Pike Place Market, then how can we bring the Pike Place Market to the people?
Well, describe exactly your tours that you were doing BC.
Okay, so BC, think of them as a 2-hour progressive meal on foot. We would take small groups of up to 12 to 16 people, depending on the tour type, into Seattle restaurants and meeting food artisans. And so over the course of 2 hours, you get a real taste of what Seattle is famous for through the lens of our stomachs. So with all the restaurants closed by mandate and Pike Place Market coming down.
Right. And they were shutting down before even the mandates, because I remember the first time I heard that a restaurant shut, I think the first one that I heard was Steelhead Diner, and that they had let all the employees go. And I was shocked. I thought, what is going on downtown that restaurants are starting to close? Because that's owned by a family. So I think they closed 5 restaurants all at once. And I just couldn't believe it. So you were in the heart of that, and seeing that before even the mandate happened, you saw that the restaurants were closing down. And that is your lifeline there, right? That's
right.
Your bloodline of what you do.
And we feature actually Kevin and Teresa Davis's restaurants on our tours. So when they closed very suddenly, we thought, oh gosh, I mean, the writing's on the wall. It's just a matter of time. And then Tom Douglas closed his restaurants, and we work with one of his establishments on every single one of our tours.
And he's got like 13 restaurants, doesn't he?
17 at the time, I think. So, and thankfully he's starting to reopen, and, all of these restaurants are reimagining themselves and coming back in a different capacity. And, that reset button in some ways is really good. It's sobering too, to really understand what it takes to survive in Seattle, to do as a small business, but certainly as a small food business is even harder. But anyways, that's kind of in a nutshell how we pivoted very quickly, because we saw the writing on the wall before it hit Seattle, warned my team that it was coming. So don't be surprised when it does happen. And then quickly being able to then say, okay, we're not going to be doing food tours because the infrastructure just isn't there. There's no places for us to take people to. And we're all at home. What are we going to do? And I approach these situations always as a marketer, because my background is in brand management. And I love putting myself in the shoes of customers. And I realized in that moment leading up to it, because we saw it happening in other parts of the world first, right? There's no reason to believe that we would be immune to that and somehow be in a bubble that it wouldn't affect us. But we saw this growing population of people who were scared. They were stuck at home now with their significant others and their children having to be stuck at home too for their schooling. And this worry that, how are we going to still be able to put food on the table for our families in a very stressful environment? And I thought, gosh, that's a need that you should be able to solve for. And I saw that also the need of our small business food community suffering because they were forced to shut down. So I thought, gosh, can we bring these two things together, still get to do what we have always done, which is be an ambassador of the Seattle food community, but just delivering it in a different way.
So what is the concept that you brought together, and what did you call it, and what exactly are you drawing upon to get that out, to support both the small businesses and get that in the hands of other people?
So each week now we curate what we call an iconic market box, which features at least 9 different market merchants every week with a bounty of their eats and treats. Each week there's always a box of fresh seasonal produce from Frank's Quality Produce, a bouquet of flowers from a market artisan grower, as well as a bag of whole bean coffee. And in addition to rotating the brands that we feature in the box, we donate $5 of every box purchased to the Pike Place Market Safety Net Fund. Most folks may not be aware that the Pike Place Market is a nonprofit organization, and there are lots of people who actually live in the market community and are sustained by social services that this nonprofit organization provides for. Child care center, senior center, food bank, medical care center. And so they set up a separate fund to help residents and merchants that were economically impacted by COVID-19 closure. So with our contributions to the Market Foundation in 18 weeks of operating in our pivot, we've donated over $38,000 back to the foundation, and that will just continue to grow. And honestly, none of this would have been possible if it weren't for Seattleites really caring about our small business community, leaning in and saying, gosh, you know what? Pike Place Market is the heart and soul of our food scene. If we don't do anything today, this place that's we've all known and loved for over 112 years could go away. Can you imagine living in a city like Seattle without a Pike Place Market? How weird would that be?
That would be awful. It would be incredibly sad. Yeah. So you're actually able to ship anywhere in the U.S. though, is that correct?
That's correct.
And are most of your shipments though, because you said a lot of this that goes to the credit to the Seattle community, are most of these going out to people in the Seattle area?
So we have 2 different programs now. So we have our local delivery that has the flowers, the produce, all of those fresh items that I mentioned. And then we also have our shipping program where we ship boxes across the nation. And those are shelf stable, at least for now. So stay tuned.
A friend of mine just posted something on Facebook recently that she was so excited to have received her, her weekly box, and it included flowers. And I thought, how are they shipping the flowers?
Wait, we're working on it.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great. Well, congratulations on that. That's especially the amount that's been donated to is just incredible. Do you know how many boxes, or can you say how many boxes you're shipping a week?
So it depends on the week. If there's a holiday or special occasion, obviously Mother's Day, wildly popular week. But I can tell you that in total, across the 18 weeks that we've been operating, we've shipped and done local delivery of over 8,000 boxes.
Now, is this all centered around the Pike Place Market, or are you working with other communities in Seattle or even in other parts of the U.S.?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've recently expanded outside of Pike Place. Our company is called Savor Seattle, after all. So because the world didn't have enough on its hands with a pandemic, we just have to layer on a social injustice cause to rile us all up. When we had our first protests here in Seattle, I just couldn't sleep. My heart just felt so heavy and it hurt for that community that was just suffering. And as if COVID-19 wasn't hard enough, right, on these small businesses, it was just really painful. And so I thought about what's a way that Savor can do its part. And we figured, gosh, why couldn't we do the exact same thing that we're doing already in the Pike Place market with that small business community? Couldn't we then create a box of Black-owned food businesses to feature? And so within 36 hours of that idea coming into my mind, we launched the Seattle Solidarity Box, featuring 11 Black-owned small businesses in the area. And we committed to donating all the profits from the first 200 boxes sold and then $5 of every subsequent box sold to the Black Lives Matter Fund in Seattle. And that just kept going. So we kept refreshing and rebooting and relaunching that product. And so it came back as version 1.5 and then 2.0. And so in total, we will have donated over $15,000 to the Black Lives Matter Fund and contributed over $160,000 in direct sales to these incredible merchants in our community. When I think about what Savor Seattle is today, we're still true to our mission of serving joy. However, I think that now we know that we are capable of so much more, and our calling now is truly to amplify underrepresented voices in our community. And so I can give you a preview of what's to come. Our next curation.
Is this for public consumption? I can keep this in the podcast?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're one of the first to hear about it. We are going to be launching a Food Network Stars box. So every chef and product that is featured in this box has had an appearance at some point in time on Food Network. Now, the proceeds of this box or the charitable connection will be for Fair Start. They will be our beneficiary. So Wayne Johnson is their executive chef, and we go way back. He used to be the head chef at Andaluca restaurant on our gourmet restaurant tour. So we're delighted to get to work with him and support a local organization that I have a lot of heart for too. When I first launched the Gourmet Seattle tour years back, I donated all of our proceeds in the first 10 days of that tour's operation to Fair Start. So I'm excited to be able to tie back in with them and bring some great products to the marketplace. So there's some really fun things in this box. And we do have a version that's shippable too. So for local delivery and shipped.
And so this is keeping you very busy right now. I mean, you're juggling so much. Did you ever imagine, like, I know that so many people right now are out of work and have a lot of time on their hands. Did you think, was there a week when you thought, okay, well, we may have to shut down and I may have some free time on my hands for the next few months or something. And then you're like, no, I'm Angela Shen. What am I doing? I have all sorts of ideas I have to implement.
I mean, what else am I going to do? Sit around?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, there was a solid week of ugly crying and very real fear about what a closure was going to look like, because we did have to let 12 people go, and thankfully we've been able to hire back quite a few people. But I think it is challenging because we don't have any sense of how long it will go for, so you can't make plans. And that's the difficulty. But we are all not necessarily in the same boat, but we're all on the same wave, let's say. And there is some comfort in knowing that too, that we're not in it alone. And we will figure it out. There are some really great minds kind of revolutionizing the medical field right now. And there's a lot of momentum.
Right. And the thing is, it's like when you're in the middle of it, and you don't know an end date, you think it's going to go on. It feels like it's going to go on forever. And then when you get to the other side, because we will get to the other side, when you get to that other side, you're kind of like, oh, gosh, I did all of that worrying for so long unnecessarily. I mean, of course, there are a lot of valid reasons to be worrying right now. We all have them of varying degrees, but it's best to get creative at this time and come up with the things that we can do and can control in our own environments and help the people that we can help and that we can serve. And just know that we will get through the other side of it. And like you said, there's a lot of inventive, creative people who are problem solving right now, to get us through this, in the scientific perspective of it. So you have gone on to create something else really amazing that I'm so excited on your behalf of, and that's the Sea Kayaking Adventures that you're doing. So can you explain that?
Sure. So what's interesting is that we've actually been operating these trips to the San Juan Islands for many years now. It's just apparently in COVID times, they're way more popular. So we operate in conjunction with San Juan Island Outfitters, 3-day, 2-night gourmet kayaking expeditions. So imagine pampered paddling. You're still camping in tents, but you are being served the kind of food that you would normally experience only in a really, really nice restaurant. So think, braised short ribs, olive oil cake with a zabaglione, fresh strawberries. Like you're getting Fran's chocolates as part of a happy hour charcuterie board. I mean, it is really primo local foods and wine. And just being able to experience that in the great outdoors, on the water, incredible sea life. Sometimes we luck out and even see orcas. It's just amazing.
Can you describe, because some people might be thinking like, well, how are you able to operate those when everything is seemingly shut down? Can you just explain, just to make people feel more comfortable, how actually those come together and how people can participate in that?
So these are extremely small groups of people. We're not talking, a group of 20 people. They're very, very small. So the guide to guest ratio is 1 to 4. And when you're out on the water with your guide, first of all, you are in tandem kayaks with your partner. And so hopefully you and your partner are are used to being next to each other, but you're on the water pretty socially distanced naturally by the nature of kayaking. And San Juan Island Outfitters has really put a lot of safety protocols into place to ensure your health and wellness while you're out on these trips. But we are outside and you are quite distanced from one another. And also just even before COVID, these groups were small. We never took groups of more than 12 at a time anyway. And so now is actually an even better time to come, frankly, because the groups have gotten even smaller.
Now, are you camping? Are the groups camping or are they in cabins?
They're camping. So you're in your own tents with your own partner or your guest that you're bringing.
Your quarantine, as people are saying,
yes.
or your buddy bubble or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right.
Whatever the term is now. And do you have to set up your own tent, or it's all set up for you and you arrive on your kayak and you're, like you said, pampered?
So it's a little bit of both. I think here in Seattle, we like to feel like we're involved and engaged in our experiences. And so we do encourage people to set up their own tents. But if you're not comfortable doing that, happy to do that on your behalf. But really, it's, you're working up an appetite paddling to knowing that you're going to have amazing food waiting for you on shore for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's just a tremendous opportunity. And I think what's been interesting is even though we have been operating these for several summers, they've never been quite as popular as they are now.
I noticed you're sold out on a number of them and you've just added some extra dates, which is awesome.
Yeah. Everybody's excited to get out and be in nature and do local getaways. The challenge is, and I don't know if you've come across this, but every campsite and every Airbnb is booked. People are wanting to get out and do these local getaways, but there's just not enough capacity given, how careful we do need to be with limited exposure. So thankfully, San Juan Island Outfitters has standing reservations at all of the best state parks in the islands. And so that's how we've been able to just keep adding dates, which is a blessing.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share that either you're working on or that you're doing right now that that we should know about?
I would say just a word of encouragement to your listeners, which is that there is definitely hope at the end of the tunnel. And if I've learned anything in the last 18 weeks, it's really that us as individuals in our communities can make a difference. And so be it making a social media post that tags your favorite restaurant or wearing a mask, it is selfless what you can achieve that costs nothing.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so, yes, if you can spend the dollars, great. Go ahead and do that. Spend intentionally, support your local community. But there are lots of things that you can do individually that do make a difference, that don't cost anything. And so I would encourage you to do that, lean in, because if we want our communities to look like they did before COVID, BC, then now is the time to lean in and ensure that they are there for us once we're on the end of the tunnel.
And where can people find more information about ordering the market boxes and then also about the sea kayaking trips?
Sure. You just go to our website, savorseattle.com, SAVOR Seattle.com, and you can find information about both of our trips and link to our market box ordering page.
Great. And I highly encourage people to sign up for your newsletter because it's always really fun. I love getting it because it's always really fun to see what you're up to. So I encourage that as well. And I'll link to that in the show notes. So Angela, anything else that we need to cover today?
No, thank you so much, Beth, for having me on your show.
Oh, Angela, it was just great to see you virtually over Zoom again. Well. I know. And I can't wait. I know for a long time we were trying to get together for a run. So when things calm down for you and I can get off my island of West Seattle, then we'll actually go for a trail run at some point.
I would love that.
I know. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.
Boy, I just love the fact that she did so much planning so early on and she could see what was ahead. And then she just figured out what was going to work best for her vendors and customers. And just, on top of that, she's just doing so much to support the community through all those donations. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might like to go back to episode number 45 to hear our first conversation together. And you might also like episode number 47, and that's with Jean Thompson of Seattle Chocolates. I just figured the whole food thing, the whole Seattle thing, you might enjoy both of those. You can find those and all of my other episodes, as well as links to all the things we chat about at shesboldpodcast.com/episodes or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. If you'd like to support the show and let me know how much you are inspired by these conversations and how much you look forward to hearing the uplifting stories from my guests, go to patreon.com/bebold. Patreon supporters at just $5 a month get to submit questions for me to ask guests and become part of our private Facebook group. And that is ladies only. They also get to access bonus content, including questions I ask of the guest. To keep up with me, you can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram at both Beth Whitwa, it's BETHWHITWA, and also Wandergal, WANDERGAL. I have to admit, I'm not great at posting on Instagram, but I've got some really nice, pretty photos on both of those accounts, and I'm trying to make an effort to be more proactive and consistent with that. Feel free to leave a message or question at 877-280-5170. I really appreciate feedback, good or bad. Good, please let me know. You can also email me at beth@shesboldpodcast.com. Let me know if you have suggestions for future guests or topics, and if there's anyone you'd like me to bring back to the show. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group for support and encouragement for whatever ways you're trying to be bold. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast, and until next time, be bold.